Welcome back to Believers IS Academy. In today's topic of the day discussion, we are discussing a very important topic, and of course, I'm stressing this the importance of the topic with respect to the public distribution system or PDS is well known and well seen in terms of how UPSC had previously asked questions based on this particular topic. And as this mostly revolves around one key issue, which is food security in the country, right? And which also tries and connects with other important aspects with respect to nutritional security of the country or nutritional requirement, basic minimum nutritional requirement of the country, or ensuring farmers' income, right? So all of this is pretty much interlinked to this one particular topic, which is public distribution system. And this particular video is about the need, or discussing about the need as to why we have to restructure the PDS system in the country. So this video, we will try and understand what PDS system is in the country, the need for its restructuring, and also the challenges, and probably in the end we will try and solve one prelims question. So now let's begin the lecture by starting with the question as to why are we discussing about the restructuring of the PDS. So because of the recent study, the CRISIL study, which revealed in its Thali index that it shows that nearly 50% of rural Indians and approximately 20% of the urban, right, and 50% of the rural population in India cannot afford two balanced meals a day, right? So it's not talking about meal. Of course, there is a guarantee. People have tried and ensured that they have come out of hunger, majority of the population. But here this index is not talking about starvation or not having the sufficiency to have two meals a day, but it is talking about not capable of, or let's say not being able to afford two balanced meals a day. Balanced meal means that particular meal which includes all the nutritional content, right? The right amounts of carbohydrates, right? The right amount of protein, the right amount of vitamins, right? Fiber content, right? All of this put together becomes a very balanced meal, right? So the index, the Thali index, talks about 20% of urban population in the country and 15% of rural population in the country, which is unable to afford two balanced meals a day. And this particular data is contrasting with the recent data which was released by the World Bank, where it clearly states, or it claims, the World Bank data which was released in 2024 claims that extreme poverty in India has fallen sharply from 16.2% to all the while 2.3% in 2022 and 23. So this drastic reduction, which already we have seen, is totally in contradiction with the nutritional content of, or let's say the nutritional requirement of the Indian population. So this is something very important, and this gap reveals a key issue in terms of the income poverty reduction and the food and nutritional security mismatch. So we can drive an equation out of this, which says that income poverty, although the country has seen a reduction in the income poverty, still this doesn't equal, or this does not equate to the food and nutritional security, right? So this is an important derivation or important equation that can be derived, stating, and in fact, this can even be asked as a mains question from the GS3 point of view, right? It can directly give you this particular equation saying that in India, although we have seen a decrease in the income poverty or levels, or let's say the decrease in the or let's say the country has seen a reduction in the income poverty, still the country faces the problem or lags behind enriching or ensuring the nutritional security of the country, of the people, right? Explain or elucidate or discuss, right? So this particular video the points that we will discuss will be able to help you address this particular dimension of the question, right? And hence we'll have to talk about the PDS system. Why? Because although the country has seen the reduction in the poverty levels, still it means when the country is showing some reduction in the poverty levels, means the incomes have increased, right? Or let's say the number of employment, or let's say people gaining employment, might have increased, right? Poverty reduction essentially means that income is increasing of the people, which means if the increasing in the income, if it is seen in the country, then obviously the consumption of the country also should increase, right? So this is a very key fundamental concept of economy, right? When the income of the particular family or an individual increases, obviously the person will spend, so means the consumption of the person will increase. But it is in stark contradiction in terms of the food and nutritional security of the country, which shows a very, you know, heinous figures, right? Which clearly shows 20% of urban population and 50% of rural population, which cannot maintain or afford two balanced meals, right? It could be because of a lot of reasons. One obvious reason we can think of is the lack of awareness and how devoid our Indian diet is in terms of ensuring the right nutritional content to be put on the plate. Of course, we eat a lot of non-veg and we also eat a lot of protein-rich diet. Doesn't mean that your diet is fully balanced, right? It's also about choosing the right quantity, right? Right quantity of the right items. So hence, ultimately, this connects to the restructuring of the PDS. So now, why PDS? PDS mostly because this is that part of the country or that system of the country which provides essential food grains and also ensures that few items other than these essential food grains are provided at a subsidized commodity, or let's say subsidized price, right? It is that system which provides essential food grains and subsidized commodities to whom? To mostly the poor of the country. And how are they going to get this? This is through fair price shops or the FPS. And which are the most commonly available commodities or cereals or the products or food items that we are talking about? It's usually wheat, rice, sugar, cereals, etc. And talking more about PDS, right? What is it? It is to manage the major aspects of PDS. If we have to talk about, one is the most important aspect of PDS is to manage food security in the country, especially to ensure that poor are able to get food at affordable prices. And another important aspect of the public distribution system is that the control of it, right? It has been controlled by both central government and the state government in different domains. So the first thing, the procurement, right? The central government controls, or the central government has the power on these PDS, which is your public distribution systems, through FCIs, Food Corporation of India, which takes care of the procurement, the storage, and even the bulk allocation of food grains to different states, right? And also the concerned localities. And on the other hand, the state government, after the allocation and after the procurement of all of these things happen, then the state government under its ambit so tries to control these two things. One is it identifies the eligible people, issuing the ration cards, and also it supervises the FPS. FPS nothing but is your fair price shops, which takes care of the distribution of these commodities, right? So these are the network of all those shops which takes care of the distribution of these items, right? Now talking about the goals. So now what is the goal of PDS then? The goal of PDS, the first and foremost thing is food security, right? Because it wants to try and make the food commodities more affordable and nutritionally rich for the people of the country. Second most important thing is poverty elevation, right? To ensure that more and more essential food items comes under the basket of the PDS, so that it can be subsidized and made available to the poor sections of the people, so that poverty elevation, or let's say people who are earning even, let's say, very less, right? Even people who are earning less or considerably less, that they don't have to spend half of their income only on the essential food grains. So that was the major ultimatum of the PDS, to ensure that the poverty elevation happen. And third most importantly, the farmers support, right? So hence we will any which ways we'll be discussing about the need for restructuring. So we will come back to that. So what is the need? One is The most important reason why. So now we have understood what the public distribution system is, and we also have understood that there is a need, right, concerning how the PDS is working ineffectively in terms of ensuring nutritionally rich food for its people. So the first point as to why we need the reconstruction or the restructuring of PDS is because that the PDS, the public distribution system that India has right now, is mostly cereal centric, right? Which means the current system equalizes cereal intake but neglects protein, vitamins, and minerals, which means it mostly focuses on the cereals rather than pulses. Now, if you try and understand the very simple difference between a cereal and a pulses, is that cereals are basically those grains which mostly provide you energy. Of course, even pulses give you energy, but if we have to talk in terms of biological, or let's say in terms of biologically, if we have to speak about these two things, cereals are those that are derived from some of the gracious plants. Like mostly some of the examples of most famous cereals are your wheat, rice, barley, maize. So basically these are your cereals, and when you talk about cereals, they are naturally very rich in carbohydrates, fiber, right? And these are the most important two important components or things which are most predominantly found in the cereals. So they absolutely lack all those important vitamins, right? Amino acids, and most importantly protein, right? So these are the things which we don't find in the cereals. But on the other hand, pulses, these are those dried seeds of leguminous plants, especially talking about seeds like your chickpeas, even pulses, dal, the black chana, and all of those things. So basically these are your pulses, which are naturally very high in protein, amino acids, vitamins, and it also has various other minerals, right? So hence the country PDS system is mostly inclined towards having more cereal commodities, or let's say cereal based food grains, especially your wheat, rice, maize, all of those things, and it completely neglects vitamins, and minerals. So hence, as restructuring has to be done in terms of how the procurement happens, right? And talking about the pulse consumption gap, as we discussed, poor households consume only half as many pulses as rich households due to affordability issues. As we discussed, the nature of cereals and pulses, and also we discussed all those things that comes under pulses. Pulses basically is are your chickpeas, green peas, all those, black chana, right? Horse grams, all of those things come under the category of pulses, which invariably is affordable, right? Because even in today's country, today's generation, having an healthy life or trying to live a life which is healthy, which is health, rich, is very costly. Right, this is another important drawback also. One of the important drawback, or one of the most worst drawback of any country in this particular generation, is that to even maintain a healthy life, in healthy lifestyle, just by following healthy eating habits, once again that is costly, right? So it is the same point. So pulse, or let's say the consumption of pulses in the country, is very poor in the poor households, considering how costly these pulses are, right? Because they are not affordable to the normal people. And talking about another important reason why the restructuring of PDS is required, leakages and misallocations. Because of the subsidies, that are often provided for these items, this even mostly benefits the rich farmers or the rich households, and especially in rural areas, the top 10% receive 88% of what poorest of 5% get, right? So there is a huge disparity. And talking about the fiscal strain, free grains extended to 80 crore people under the National Food Security Act 2024, despite many already meeting the cereal needs. Means already when people had completedly, let's say completed receiving all the essential cereals, or let's say they had gotten a batch of cereals, but still under the National Food Security Act 2024, again free grains were extended to the same 80 crore people who had already gotten or encashed this benefits under the same initiative, right? So they had already met the cereal needs, and still, despite that, again they were given or rolled out with the same benefits of free grains for another 80 crore, which is a wastage of resources, right? So hence, probably for this repetition, instead of this repetition of giving free grains to the same 80 crore, probably that investment could have happened in the pulses, or let's say procurement, or let's say to even have more storage units to storage these, or let's say to store this pulses, could have been utilized by the government. So these are some of the important points thinking about why we need the restructuring. And then talking about the key challenges in the nutrition oriented PDS. First is the targeting issues, right? Still, let's say the country has done certain strides, or let's say achieved certain steps in ensuring that it has tried and implemented all of these important aspects, especially to include the pulses and all of it. Still, what is the problem? What could be the challenges? So the first is targeting issues, right? So most importantly, the needy households, the most important needy households usually get excluded, right? And this inclusion is one thing which is absolutely required, and this is one of the important issue, the biggest challenge, that targeting, or let's say the right targeting, does not happen, and usually the most needy households get eliminated. And talking about another challenge is the political resistance. Cutting cereals to expand pulses may trigger backlash. So now, just because, I mean, you know how the politic works, right? So just because pulses are important doesn't mean that you cut down the commodity, or let's say the distribution of production, or let's say cereals quantity, which ultimately will create a huge backlash in the in the society, right? So it could even try and become more political, right? Especially political here means the government, right? So the government, if it tries to reduce the distribution of cereals and increase the distribution of pulses, it would definitely create a backlash, considering how important cereals are for the people in their day-to-day life, right? People mostly need rice, wheat, and all those essential commodities than dal and other lentils, especially considering the diet of India, right? The diet of the Asian countries, where the rice, wheat are mostly consumed than all these legumes and all of those things, right? So hence that becomes important, and also there is a problem that it can even be politicized, right? So that is also one of the biggest challenge. And third is the pulse procurement, because the rate is very volatile. Any sudden changes with the quantity of pulses, the rate diminishes, or let's say increases very, very rapidly, and hence also the storage is difficult. And we spoke about this price volatility, and also the limited production complicates the large scale distribution of the requirement of the country, right? So this is another important challenge. And fourth most importantly, is the fiscal sustainability, means expanding subsidies for diverse food risks ballooning costs, means already the government is in fiscal deficit, right? The government is trying its best to make sure that it is using its revenue resources to its best to address to all those important sections. And now the same money, if it is getting diverted to procure or give subsidies to more pulses, or to give you more nutritional rich food, now the problem with the fiscal deficit will even widen, right? The government's fiscal deficit will even widen, right? So this is also one of the important problem. And next is the leakages and black marketing. So the costlier items like pulses increases diversion risk. So you cannot store it, and even if you are storing it in the systems, let's say even let's say you are having some of the pulses, the subsidized food, which often gets diversified or diverted to open markets. So this is also one of the important things. So especially when these items are more valuable, like pulses, right? And also even as compared to your wheat, right? Pulses obviously is more expensive as compared to your wheat, so the incentive for the corruption of the pulses will be obviously very high, right? So hence this is also another important drawback or challenge concerning the problem with respect to PDS reconstruction or restructuring. Now, talking about the way forward, what are the important things that needs to be done? One is redefine food norms, right? Adopt a nutritional based benchmark, which creates a protocol or kind of a benchmark which says 2 balanced thalis a day, right? And also this has to be created region specific, so that every region has its own diet restrictions and diet conditions, which has to be ensured. So hence an adoption at the national level, or to start with as a pan, or let's say as a pilot project, can be started right from the state or even at the regional level, to adopt nutrition based benchmark, to at least start with 2 balanced meals a day, at least 2 balanced meals a day, where the government tries to educate the people to try and include more fiber in terms of vegetables, or let's say to have more protein in terms of eggs, paneer, right, fish, chicken, right? So all of these things the government can make, ultimately to really redefine the food norms. And then talking about the subsidies, it has to be more targeted, and also it has to be prioritized to the poorest households, using the recent household consumption and expenditure survey data. And then talking about the market, or let's say the basket, it has to be diversified. Means the basket of the PDS now, which is mostly concentrated by cereal, has to be diversified by having more pulses, millets, dairy gradually, while trimming excess cereal allocation. Then, as we discussed, pilot projects, test reforms at state level before the national rollout, this we discussed, and tech integration. Aadhaar linked ration cards, as in the ration cards that are presently available must be linked to Aadhaar, and also digital tracking of the people who consume food from, or let's say take the or benefit from the PDS, right, has to be digitally tracked, to ensure that if this particular wheat or rice which people have taken from certain shops, or let's say especially the shops that we are talking about, the PDS has to go to that particular family itself. Usually what happens, people buy it from the PDS, right? They take it from the shops, the PDS, and then they sell it in the market, right? Let's say they got it for free, and now they sell it, let's say for 10 rupees 1 kg. People are making money out of the PDS commodities, or let's say the food grains that are available in the PDS. People are encashing it by selling it in the open market. So that also can be pretty much stopped if everything is digitally tracked, to cut this leakages. And talking about the convergence with the nutritional schemes, it should be an utmost importance of the government to align this particular PDS system to various other important schemes of the government, like the Poshan Abhiyan, the ICDS, Integrated Children Development Scheme, right, and the midday meal scheme, ultimately to ensure it's not just about the distribution of the food, but also the enrichment of the nutritional capacity in the food items, right? So anyway, that is all is with respect to the way forward. Now let's solve one prelims question. Consider the following, or let's say, with reference to India's public distribution system, consider the following statements. PDS currently distributes mainly rice and wheat, ensuring both calorie and protein adequacy. The CRISIL Thali Index measures food deprivation based on the affordability of a balanced meal, not just calories. Under NFSA, National Food Security Act, 80 crore beneficiaries are entitled to free food grains irrespective of their actual consumption levels. Use the comment section and leave your answers below. Anyway, that's all for this particular video. Signing off, this is Madan Gopal. Have a beautiful day.